summit. Originally we had a sister coming in from South Carolina, a member of the Cobra, but Sister Ifia Nawangaza, but she wasn't able to catch her flight this morning, and so Brother Akinyele is going to take over. Moja Akinyele, he's a professor at Georgia State, and he's going to take over to do that. But first what we're going to do is we're going to let Brother Ishmael Abdul-Salaam from the Law Foundation come up. And so we are going to let him come up and introduce himself, and he is going to go for about 20 minutes and then come at you with some questions. And please, anybody who does a workshop today, put some time and effort into their workshop. So please put some time and effort into paying attention and coming up with some questions. Because the questions that you ask are questions that are going to help us get reparations. And that's how you should think about those questions. And don't be afraid to ask any questions, because nobody is an expert on anything. They're just a little bit more learned in the sense that they studied a little more than you on that particular topic. So no, there's no such thing as a dumb question. What's the saying? The only dumb question is the one you don't ask. Right. But so at this time, I'll let Brother Ishmael Salam come up and go ahead and introduce himself.
Assalamu alaikum.
Abdul-Salaam, sir.
Hotep. Barghani. What's happening? I believe we covered everybody. Free the land. Black power. This is the name of Almighty God, our Master Prophet Muhammad, to whom all praise and honor is due. For coming here, finding us in the wilderness hells of North America, and raising up Messenger Elijah Muhammad, the last messenger of Allah, teaching us for 40 years of his life, giving birth to the black nation. And in the name of my leading teacher, the Honorable Sallallahu Muhammad, that I come to you, brothers and sisters, friends, supporters. I come to you in peace. Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I want to thank all the believers of the Honorable Sallallahu Muhammad, all the students, the supporters, the organizers who made this all possible. I think that Atlanta is critical in the reparations movement. We study the history of Atlanta and black power struggles and movements. We know that Atlanta has had a vital role. I come to you by way of the city of Philadelphia, where we have been over the last 10 years since I've been there, been a part of a growing reparations movement. Philadelphia is another one of those cities that is largely populated by African Americans that's necessary in this fight. And I'm glad to see as many of you here from around the area who are reparations supporters, particularly black students, because what Atlanta represents to any black power struggle or movement is the youth, because the concentration of universities that are in this area. So I'm honored to be here before you. I also would like to give greetings of peace from the Honorable Sallallahu Muhammad, who is in Geneva right now, attending a working group session on our behalf. He will be back next week, and I already feel that I'll have only positive things to say about this meeting and the love and respect that you have shown us today. I do have a small connection with the AUC that I spent my freshman and sophomore years at Morehouse, and I think I was probably more of a Clark student, because I spent most of my time here for various reasons. There was a lot of people who were interested in what I was interested in, and I found a second home at Clark Atlanta University, so I'm also honored to be here today. Brother Shaka told me that I can introduce this from a wide range. And he said, go ahead, brother, and hit it from a spiritual perspective. And I said, well, I can hit it from a lot of angles, particularly the title, International Legal Approach. But he said, go there just a little, because our people need it. And I wanted to share something as a Muslim, but I know I can relate to you as a Christian, I can relate to you as a Hebrew, I can relate to you as a spiritual person. and that we all are related or connected to these prophecies. Let me start with something from the book of Genesis, Genesis 15:13. And he said unto Abraham, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land not theirs, and they shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterwards they shall go out with great substance. Now, where does reparations come in with that?
Yes, sir.
It goes in with that part we talk about great substance.
Right.
Now, if I gave you, if we went to and had the Torah was very specific. They put in the Torah, it said great wealth. And they also didn't say afflicted, it said enslaved. So a lot of times I like to use the Torah because it's more direct about what it is. We were enslaved. And if we study the histories of the world, no other people served in a strange land and were afflicted for 400 years other than the black man, woman, and child in America.
That's right.
At one time when I was a student, almost questioning that fact, I would study and go to Egypt and look in the pyramid walls, trying to look at the tablets and texts and the hieroglyphs and the stones, trying to find the people who were enslaved for 400 years in Egypt or ancient Kemet. And there is no writings, no text, no papyrus that has any people being enslaved in Egypt for 400 years. And our history here in America clearly denotes our suffering, our presence of being here for over 400 years now. So I would say to you that prophecy that's spoken of in this book speaks of you. And that great substance that's promised to us is reparations.
Yeah.
Also known as recompense, redress, restitution. I have to introduce these other words because typically reparations are paid from one nation to another. And we haven't gotten to the point where we are a nation yet. We are still people searching for our identity. We went from colors, well, we went before that, coons, maroons, Negroes, colored, Afro-Americans, African-Americans. So we are still a people travailing in the search of our identity. Ultimately, it is destined for us to become a nation. And I hope that your quest for reparations is not a check, but that your quest for reparations is to be restored as a people, as a civilized people of the world again. Okay, and a check can't do that. A check can't do that. So what we need is repair. I want to speak briefly about the World Conference Against Racism that was in 2001. The world came together to identify the slave trade as a crime against humanity. But there's a problem there. And this will help to walk into the argument that the Honorable Abdul-Salaam Muhammad is bringing before the United Nations. Crimes against humanity. Humanity is a part or connected to a community of human beings. That's humanity. What a problem has been for African Americans or people of the diaspora who have suffered from this Holocaust is that our human rights have not been recognized. We have never been recognized internationally as human beings. You walk around and see a lot of you say, well, I'm a human being. I got my human rights. That's what you think. That's a feeling. But to be a human being and to have human rights is something that you fight for and you fight to get, and you fight to maintain. So when we assume that the world protects our human rights and gives us human rights, it's not necessarily so. For years, and how the United States government hides us, it hides us as being accepted American citizens.
That's right. That's right.
You are a hidden minority internationally. You are hidden. How are you hidden? Because of your names.
That's right.
Our last names. We still connected to the slave master. We still have names of Johnson, Jones, Williams, Jackson. We are still connected. We are hidden because of our language.
Teach.
Our language has been lost. We speak English. And throughout the diaspora, we speak Spanish, Portuguese, French. Our language has been taken away. Our culture is indicative of the majority culture.
Teach.
So our culture has been taken away. Our language has been taken away. Our religion has been taken away. Everything that was stripped from us, that made us human beings, was taken away. Thus, those are your human rights.
That's right.
They teach it, right? Go ahead.
And if you don't fight for those things, you say, I have my human, well, how do you have them? Who gave them to you and when? Yes, we fought a civil rights movement, but civil rights gives you rights to participate in a civil society.
They teach it, brother. Go ahead.
It gives you a right to share a bus ride, to eat at a restaurant, okay, to get a job.
Teach. They teach it, brother.
But it doesn't say you are a human being. It basically says someone who isn't a human being can ride equally on the bus. It basically says someone who isn't a human being can eat at a restaurant. It doesn't guarantee you your human rights. And that doesn't say anything against those who fought for civil rights. But at the time that we were fighting for civil rights, there was also nationalists, black people fighting for human rights, which should have been the thrust of the struggle. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says in The Fall of America, they gave me 20 minutes. I'm going to work within that, brother. I know I'm getting over. He says, lost my page, here it is, page 216. It is true that the history of our treatment by the devil slave master practically made our parents and ourselves less than human beings. This is why I teach that the main rights we should seek first are human rights.
Good teaching, right? That's teaching.
That should have been sought first. Well, where do you get human rights? Where do you secure human rights? Well, you get human rights from civil society, from the rest of from the world. Can your former oppressor or slave master give you human rights? Do they desire to give you human rights? When the Constitution labeled you as being 3/5 of a human being, less than a human being. Politically, and even physically, and the way we were looked at was certainly less than 3/5. We were placed on the level as child. So the United Nations is where we take our argument to secure human rights, thus working toward restoration and reparation. It's a process. We talk about the legal approach. It's a process. Okay. Now there's something that I want to read from Malcolm. Right up until today, recent history, black, brown, red, and yellow man have been ruled by the white man through European colonialism. Now these same dark people who were ruled by the European minority are actually the majority. Yet the white minority was able to preserve their domination by practicing divide and conquer. When the black, brown, red, and yellow man of Africa and Asia realized what was going on, they had a conference in Indonesia, which has come to be known as the Bandung Conference. And what they did at the Bandung Conference actually changed the course of history. They had many differences. They had religious differences, political differences, economic differences, but they agreed to submerge their differences and come together against the common enemy. The thing that all of them had in common: colonialism, exploitation of white supremacy. Out of this grew the African, Asian, Arab bloc of non-aligned nations. They have differences among themselves, yet they work together. Their work in unity enabled them to free the dark nations of Africa through putting pressure on the United Nations. And now the efforts of decolonization in the UN are led by people who are African, Asian, and Arab, or he is either Hindu, Buddhist, or Muslim. And all of this is as a result of the ability of black, brown, red, and yellow people to forget their little differences and come together against a common foe or common enemy, the oppressor. And this is a good example that the black man in America can copy if we want to bring freedom, justice, and equality and human dignity. So here it is, Malcolm presenting, I'm making an argument for the United Nations.
Good teacher.
Because there is a block of people who have common interests. Forget about Iraq, forget about this war. Don't get caught up into that. Forget about that. Don't get caught up into that. There are people out there who are looking for black people, particularly here in America, to rise up and take their place in the world. In the United Nations, I've got to move faster. There is what is known as the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 27. And this is the mandate where we seek to move to find, to get our human rights, thus reparations. Article 27 says, in those states in which ethnic, religious, or linguistic minorities exist, persons belonging to such minorities shall not be denied the right in community with other members of their group to enjoy their own culture, to profess and practice their own religion, or to use their own language. All of those we have been denied.
That's right.
Good teacher, brother.
All of those we are continuously being denied.
That's right.
Also, this particular covenant was ratified and signed by the United States government. So what the United States government does is try to hide the fact of the damages that have been done to black people. Yet they go out in the world and they tell Iraqis, get your reparations. Go steal a couch. Go steal a television. Go steal something. The president himself, Secretary of State, said, it's common for people after being oppressed to let off that energy and go out against their oppressor and take reparations.
It sure is.
They basically saying, get your reparations. They told the Iraqi people didn't.
That's right.
But how can they go out and profess freedom, justice, and equality to Iraqi people who are sitting right here in America inside the borders, inside the belly of this beast? Black people are here who have been robbed of our own culture, language, everything about us has been robbed, and they have done nothing to help us to reclaim it. That's the sign of a continuous wrong.
That's right.
The damage was done, but what has been done to help the former slaves to reclaim what was lost? That's the point. Yes, they set up the Freedmen's Bureau. But that didn't do it. Yes, affirmative action, that didn't do it. No, that didn't restore us to a people belonging to humanity.
That's right.
Good teacher, brother.
That's the whole point. A people belonging to humanity. Slavery has remained the most glaring example of an unaddressed historical injustice in the United States. It's a moral issue. It's an issue of guilt. I point out a book, The Guilt of Nations by Barton. Point this book out. Let me read some real. How am I doing on time, bro? I'm looking at. I'm out of time. I'm out of time. I just want to get through a couple of more points. Sir.
Go ahead, brother. You got a good 7 minutes.
Okay, let me go through this. The demand for reparations is based on the belief that the crimes and injustices inflicted by slavery upon slaves, their descendants, the communities in Africa from which they were taken, and the millions who died in the passions have never been acknowledged by the perpetrators of those who profited from it. have never been acknowledged. Clinton gave a half-hearted, it doesn't legally define itself as an apology. So no president has ever apologized for it.
That's right.
Guilt, something you should know, because the argument is that, well, I didn't enslave anybody. Guilt does not pass from generation to generation. So, Caucasian people that are here, no, you're not guilty. But rights and responsibilities, I'm pointing that out, if you don't mind, just bear with me. I'm going to point something out to make an example. Okay? But the rights and responsibilities do. If Americans of the 20th and 21st century are prepared to inherit the intellectual and moral assets of the founding fathers, should they not also accept the moral debt of the founding fathers?
That's right.
Okay. So no, the guilt does not transfer from generation to generation, but the responsibility does. So therefore, that makes an international argument for reparations viable and doable in the court of law. So therefore, the United States of America is not willing to ever be fair when it comes to reparations. Nor were they fair to the Native Americans, to the indigenous Americans, the Hawaiians, the Japanese Americans. They were not fair. Congress has never been fair. But most successful reparations settlements were gained internationally through pressures of the United Nations. So I just want to point that out as a basis for our claim. We also use, and this is my last point, I'm going to get off with my brother out of respect to him and respect to the audience. Anytime you have a legal case, you need a loophole. 44 million black people can't just slip through on reparations. Nor can we add the millions more in the Caribbean. You have to go through some legal crack. We chose now with Salas Muhammad to use the claim that our mother tongue has been denied and taken away from us and is a continuous violation.
That's right.
The mother tongue. The fact that we don't know our mother tongue perpetuates psychological damage, social damage, economic damage. The fact that you don't know your mother tongue means you don't know where you came from. You say I'm African, but where in Africa? What tribe? What language did you speak? Then if they say, well, we can do genetic testing, but if you do genetic testing on me and you, you're going to find Fulani, Hausa, you're going to find a whole mix. That only speaks to the damage that you can't do a genetic test to find out exactly where I came from. That only speaks to the damage of it. So because of that continuous damage that has been done to us, we need repair. We need reparations. We need a nation that we can call our own to restore ourselves. I hope I've been kind to you. And I hope that you've been able to get something in this short period of time, because I want to allow my brother his time to do what he has to do. If you have questions, we've agreed to save them all at one time. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Give our brother Salaam another hand. It was, as was stated earlier, my name is Abdul-Salaam.
And buy cheap merchandise.
Exactly.
And when we get that money, we'll probably start, moving up and start doing. So as long as we poor and ignorant, they survive on that. Cheap labor and
Cheap labor
and merchandise. We buy anything.
As consumers.
Consumers.
And on the other hand, as we look at how we're going to challenge this thing, if we're cheap labor and we're located in particular parts of the economy, then organizing people in that sector of the economy gives us a certain power, right? If we're consumers and the economy is dependent upon us being consumers, then we have to organize that power. One of the most powerful things I've ever seen in the history of movement in this country was when black folk in Mississippi decided they were going to boycott stuff. They shut down entire towns. Okay, so we just have, again, we have to look to our history and see what we can utilize in this whole reparation fight. Yes, sir.
Now we have this whole war on terror thing. You know, there's been so much legislation that slipped through as far as the different FBI has different laws and things that we do now. So back in the 70s, when the Black Panthers and they had all these leaders, and they tried to do something real positive in the community, pretty much they were informants, black people, and FBI, and they shut them down. As we start this reparations movement and other movements to, improve the black community, I can see that same type of thing happening with all the wiretap and the things that are going on now. What can we do to combat that? What ideas do you guys have to stop them from taking out our leaders and taking our leadership like they continue done over the years?
I'm going to keep it as simple and real. You got to keep on being persistent. The enemy is always going to develop tactics to infiltrate, to spy. All of us at some point in our lives have roaches and know somebody had roaches. I don't care what type of rain or what type of thing you get to kill, and they keep coming back. I'm trying to break it. So meaning, we got to be persistent. We got to be mad. That type of will and power and persistence will overcome any infiltration, tactics. They've already looked at, brother already mentioned the cocaine. That was the cocaine that came into the community. That was chemical warfare. The AIDS in our community, that's biological warfare. So all those type of elements of warfare to destroy us have been used, but yet we are still here surviving.
That's right.
So I don't care what happens, we're going to be here because, as I said, as I opened up the book, when I'm opening up spiritually, this is God's will.
Right.
So when you say your enemy has more power and authority than Almighty, then you've been defeated. We are already victory because God has promised us to help us to get over this challenge.
That's right.
And I would add to that is, agree with his last point. The first and most important thing we have to do to arm ourselves is the spiritual fight. Okay, when people are determined spiritually, then you can defeat any enemy. Now, with that, there are certain other things that goes along with that. You mentioned electronic surveillance. Throughout their history, the majority of their information comes from human sources. So I think we have to do a thing throughout our community that you don't talk to them. You know what I mean? You don't talk to you don't collaborate with our enemies. There have been people who go into jail rather than talk. And one of the things that does, if we have build that type of bond, I can't be put into a room and told that you're telling on me, because I know because of our bond you won't be doing it. So we have to have that type of spirit and unity and solidarity within our movement. Huey Newton made this statement a long time ago. He said creativity of the people will defeat the man's technology. No matter what technology they got, whatever. And here's another point too. Sister Marimba, she shared this tape with me that said, we really want to think about this war on terrorism, which is actually a war on us. There was a speaker who said that it was 2% of the population that controls 70% of the wealth in the United States. 90% of the wealth in the United States. In the United States, 5% which is 5% of the world's population, controls like 70% of the wealth. That's what all this war in Iraq, war in Afghanistan, all this stuff is really about. We're limited for time right now, and that's what this reparations fight is about too. Not just for us, but for other people. I'm talking about not just for Africans in America, but Africans around the world, indigenous people around the world. They have reparations fights too. And I think we have to begin to globally link up with other folk, and even in this country, link up with other folk and unite the many against the few. We have to turn this around, but it all comes down to what she said, education and consciousness. And when we do that, we can defeat anybody.
I like what you said about spiritualism. It kind of encompasses more.
Right.
One of the things about religion, it's good, it's start to me, but it's sort of put us in a box. Churches should be one, the targets we should go after, mean, when they start suppressing, try to suppress.
Try to make it brief, but she has a question too. That's one.
Basically, I like, support the truth went underground, you know, but it was effective. So all these tactics to me, besides the other ones, are good tactics, you know. What he was saying about getting involved. The women were very good. So you're the truth with a very great image. Harriet Tubman, you know.
No, what he's saying is true. And there's a difference too. You talk about leaders being isolated. There's a difference between a leader and a spokesperson. And I think we have to learn that too. All the leaders don't need to be structured here. All of our structures. You know what I'm saying?
My question was, reparations means to restore, to repair, like you said, regain our humanity. So how are we going to change our society for Black people, some Black people, if we should get reparations? And like in Georgia, 97% of the poverty, we're all sitting here, you know, educating ourselves. How do we as Black people help raise our community? How is reparations going to mend our community? Because money, land, all that stuff is not going to change our mind, our life on Black crime. So how do we do that?
Well, I think part of that, the answer to that, I'll let Brother Salaam answer it, is that we have to take this discussion from here to the streets. Because we're going to have to take it door to door and do that type of organizing. We kept on talking about, that's why students are important. I think one of the reasons they emphasize having it here because y'all are the soldiers. You're the ones who are going to be going door to door, talking to folks, talking to people about who are dealing with welfare issues, talking to parents who are dealing with education issues, and linking that to this overall fight. So we have to take it, and it has to be a step-by-step process because the education process is a part of our healing process. As more and more we become conscious, the more and more we begin to do the type of repair that we need for ourselves. Just when you establishing relationships with folk in the community as a student begins to begin that healing process that we need to do, we're responsible for, regardless if they give us a damn, excuse my language, damn thing, okay? There's some responsibility we have with each other. I was just educated the other day, and I'm sure she's going to talk about this. Sister, remember that it's not reparations between us, because we're not talking about, it's not the same thing as the damage, the violation that we've had external to our community. But we have some responsibility, particularly those of us who become aware of certain things, of some healing that we got to do in our community. Now, I mean, I always just say, once you heard it, you're responsible now. It's on us.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry that we're going to have to end this particular panel. I'm sure that it was educational and
Yeah, next time give us more time.